For movie fans, there's almost nothing more disappointing than getting sucked into a film for the majority of its runtime, only to find that the final payoff is woefully underwhelming. The horror genre can be especially prone to such situations, because it often dishes out over-the-top plots and characters that require justified and satisfying resolutions. What's more, and especially when it comes to the most upsetting viewing experiences, part of the fun derives from seeing the villains being vanquished so that the heroes live happily ever after and all seems right with the world. But what if the opposite happens, and a horror movie is ruined because it has a particularly disturbing ending? Before we go any further, there will be spoilers for these 10 films ahead, so here is your spoiler warning. I'm Ellie for What Culture, here with 10 horror movies ruined by disturbing endings. Number 10, 47 Meters Down. 47 Meters Down was never going to be mind-blowing, but it began suspensefully enough to deliver B-movie survival horror fun. It centered around sisters Kate and Lisa, who decide to watch sharks from within a diving cage while in Mexico. Predictably, things go wrong, leaving them stranded on the ocean floor as the great white beasts approach. Over the next hour, they fight to survive amidst enduring physical injuries, including the cage landing on Lisa's leg and a loss of oxygen. From there, 47 Meters Down continues doing a great job of eliciting concern for the sisters' increasingly dire situation until they're shown making it back to Taylor's boat. That's why it's such a letdown when the rug gets pulled and viewers are given the cliched twist that Lisa's been hallucinating for a while. In fact, she's still pinned beneath the cage, where she soon realizes that Kate actually died when she was attacked by the shark. Consequently, 47 Meters Down goes from being a likeably tense ride to a soul-crushingly hopeless one. Number 9, Knock at the Cabin. If not for its disappointing conclusion, 2023's Knock at the Cabin could have been another surprisingly solid M. Night Shyamalan film. After settling into the titular cabin for a vacation, Wen and her fathers, Eric and Andrew, are held captive by 4 messengers who insist that either Wen, Eric, or Andrew sacrifice themselves to prevent the apocalypse. Adding to the tension is the revelation that one of the messengers, the homophobic Redmond, assaulted Andrew years earlier. As Knock at the Cabin plays out, however, it's clear that the quartet are 100% right, with inexplicably cataclysmic events continuing to occur as Eric and Andrew delay their decision. Ultimately, Eric convinces Andrew to murder him to stop the apocalypse, leaving Andrew and Wen to move on alone. Considering Andrew's past suffering, though, it's unsatisfyingly unfair for him to raise Wen and face the post-apocalyptic world without the person who gave him happiness and comfort. Furthermore, the resolution comes off as rushed and undeserved purely for the sake of being disturbing. Number 8, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. Loosely based on actual serial killers Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole, 1986's low-budget Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer is a tremendously uncomfortable watch from the very start. Specifically, there's a grimy authenticity to every moment that's incredibly convincing, as each gratuitous interaction is portrayed with documentary-like legitimacy. Plus, Henry occasionally speaks about his traumatic childhood and abuses both Otis and Otis's empathetic sister Becky. As unpleasant as all that is, it's what Henry does during the last scenes that pushes the picture over the edge. After killing Otis for sexually assaulting Becky, Henry and Becky confess their love and spend the night at a motel. It seems as if Henry is reformed and ready to move on with Becky, but the next morning, Henry is shown leaving the motel alone, throwing Becky's bloodied suitcase into a ditch, presumably with her lifeless body inside of it, and driving away. Regardless of what really happened, it's a heartbreaking gut punch that destroys everything redeemable and rewatchable about the film. Number 7, Speak No Evil. Framed around a naive husband and wife and their young daughter who fight for their lives after unknowingly spending a weekend with a murderous couple, the 2024 Hollywood remake of Speak No Evil allows said family to defeat their foes and escape their predicament relatively unscathed. The 2022 Danish original, on the other hand, is a thoroughly more upsetting journey whose final scenes were simply too irritating, shocking, and depressing. The initial 2 acts of both versions are enjoyable and play out similarly, with most of the scenes from the older one appearing in the newer one. The 3rd act of the Danish cut is basically the inverse of the Hollywood one though, since the protagonists don't conquer evil and flee. Instead, the husband and wife are forced to watch the killers cut out their daughter's tongue so that they can pass her off as their mute daughter and trick another unsuspecting family into trusting them sometime in the future. Oh, and they strip the husband and wife naked and then stone them to death. Talk about an unbearably bleak finale. Number 6. High Tension. Helmed by transgressive writer-director Alexander Aja, High Tension is famous for its graphic violence, upsetting themes and implications, and ostensibly nonsensical twist ending. After all, it begins with 20-something Alex's mother, father, and younger brother being brutally murdered before she's kidnapped by the perpetrator. Alex's best friend, Marie, who is staying with the family, witnesses all of this and embarks on a quest to rescue Alex and stop the nameless killer. All the while, it's clear that Marie has a lot of affection for Alex, yet whenever she catches up to the kidnapper and reassures Alex that everything will be okay, Alex is noticeably frightened of her. Eventually, it's revealed that Alex is scared of both the killer and Marie because Marie is the killer. She suffers from dissociative identity disorder and other mental illnesses, and she committed all the crimes so she and Alex could be together. Consequently, Marie is hospitalized and Alex is traumatized for multiple reasons. Aside from the illogicality of Marie's plan, she simply couldn't have done what her imagined killer did due to her small body frame, among other factors. Therefore, High Tension would have worked better if it stuck to its initially straightforward and less alarming premise. Number 5. Would You Rather? The original Saw spawned dozens of imitators that placed a group of strangers in violent competitions for the amusement or revenge of crazed onlookers. By no means a towering achievement of cinema, 2012's Would You Rather is surely one of the better ones we've gotten. That's largely because of the endearing plight of vegetarian protagonist Iris, one of several people at the dinner party of wealthy sadist shepherd Lambrick. After they're done eating, Lambrick forces them to make harmful choices so that they can acquire money, and for Iris, victory means earning enough to heal her cancer-ridden brother. Iris puts herself through hell to win as she agrees to eat meat, whip another contestant, and ultimately kill her final rival, Lucas. She's victimized by other attendees along the way too, as well as forced to witness other barbaric acts inflicted on and by the other guests. Well, at least Iris gets to be her brother's hero at the end, right? Wrong. Upon returning home with the winnings, Iris finds that her brother took his life because he felt guilty for being a burden. Thus, she and viewers are left devastated and unsure of why they just endured all that torture. Number 4. Secret Window. Stephen King's stories are notoriously difficult to adapt, and while 2004's Secret Window isn't atrocious, the sinister yet silly nature of its twist ending is largely to blame for its drop in quality. Johnny Depp plays Mort Rainey, a writer who moves into a cabin after discovering that his wife Amy cheated on him with a man named Ted. Subsequently, Mort becomes increasingly unstable because he's served divorce papers and because he's harassed by a mysterious man who accuses Mort of plagiarism. Eventually, Mort realizes that he suffers from dissociative identity disorder, a manifested shooter to deal with his emotions. He kills Amy and Ted, and months later, he arrogantly undermines the town sheriff's warning that their bodies will be found. Compared to the book's ending, Mort dies and Amy and Ted survive to contemplate what's happened, the film's disturbing finale is cheap and laughably unfulfilling. That's doubly true since Johnny Depp and John Turturro, both venerable actors, give over-the-top performances that make it obvious where Secret Window is going long before it shows its hand. Number 3. The Lodge. The plot finds ex-cultist Grace Marshall spending Christmas with her future stepchildren, Aiden and Mia, at a lodge while her fiancé, Richard, is away on business. Given that the cult was led by Grace's father and that she witnessed numerous people taking their own lives, she's obviously plagued by nightmares and emotional triggers. Equally understandable, though, is that Aiden and Mia don't like Grace, especially since their mother, Laura, ended her life after learning about Grace and Richard's engagement. So they gaslight her into thinking they're all dead and in purgatory, among other pranks. Naturally, Grace has a psychological breakdown, and realizing that they screwed up, the siblings admit to lying in the hopes of fixing things. However, Grace is too damaged, and although the children definitely deserve some punishment, they don't deserve seeing Grace kill Richard before being forced to sit next to his corpse as she prepares to shoot them and herself so they can enter heaven. Yeah, the lodge goes way too far. Number 2. Inside. Like High Tension, 2007's Inside is a textbook example of the new French extremity movement because of its excessive gore and sadistic storyline. You see, several months after surviving a car crash that killed her husband, grieving widow Sarah is resting as she prepares to give birth to their baby the next day. Unfortunately, a mysterious woman with an admittedly clever motivation breaks into Sarah's house with the intention of cutting the baby out of Sarah's body and raising it herself. Sarah spends most of the night hiding from and fighting the relentless woman, leading to plenty of bloodshed, torture and homicide, including Sarah accidentally stabbing her mother Louise in the neck with a needle. If Inside were more conventional, it would allow Sarah to defeat her attacker as the movie wraps up. Instead, it further punishes her and audiences by showing the mysterious woman slice open Sarah's midsection and remove the baby. Then Sarah bleeds to death while the woman sits in a chair and comforts the child. Number 1. Last Night in Soho. Last Night in Soho follows a teenager named Ellie who moves to London to study fashion and appreciate British pop culture. Before long, she befriends another student, John, becomes the tenant of the elderly Miss Collins, and has visions of living through the 60s as an aspiring singer named Sandy, whom Ellie thinks was eventually killed. Ellie empathises with how Sandy was victimised by the misogyny of the era, soon becoming a jaded sexual puppet for her manager in exchange for more opportunities. Understandably, Ellie is determined to solve Sandy's murder and bring the culprits to justice. Unfortunately, Last Night in Soho gets too clever and distressing for its own good by having Miss Collins reveal that she is Sandy, and that she actually killed her male suitors and hid their bodies. Because they now know the truth, she stabs John and tries to murder Ellie, with the three of them clumsily fighting as Miss Collins' house burns. Things work out in the end, but the twist is too troubling to be enjoyable because it feels unearned. It punishes the well-intentioned, if overbearing, John, and it turns the undeniably tragic Sandy into a morally questionable anti-hero, if not an outright villain.